Good afternoon, everybody, and happy Thursday. Another kind of uneventful day out there, but I want to walk through everything because I feel, and I think we all know, that sitting back is the most important part of trading, and today was one of those days. Now, we had some really good action here on CRML that I executed on to a T, and I feel like I actually traded this fairly well today, and I'm pretty happy with it. But there really wasn't a whole lot else moving. We also had some good trade on PRSO, had some good stuff on MRM for a little small. That's it. But we're going to walk through every single trade from this morning in GLTO and CRML, MRM, PRSO, how I did it, and how you can too. And so the big thing today is we came into the open and we had stuff like TTRX that was big up into the bell. And big thing the past few days is we've just had fade left and right, and that again decreases your opportunity. So the leading gapper here on TTRX, again, was very short-lived, and it faded after the bell, reducing any opportunity there, and so we're stuck watching GLTO. And so GLTO makes a pretty nice move out of the bell, and I try to capitalize on it back in pre-market and take a little loss, and I started the day a little bit red, and I had to come back from it. Now, going into market open, this was putting in place a nice range, and I actually quite liked how this was setting up. And so I took the pullback here for the curl back up into top of its range here, and I just didn't get that at first. And so you can see it actually breaks trend to the downside and closes beneath trend, and then it reclaims, and I played again after market open for a nice little win. But the big thing here is there wasn't really any great opportunities where you could really get comfortable here. And that's really what it boiled down to, is there's no spot here to really get comfortable. I played it up here out of the halt for a little win. I played it back here for a little win, played it here for a little loss. And so you're just sort of stuck back and forth. There's not really this consistent opportunity you can really get in the groove on. Now you can also see it here. I also played it off this pullback. You can barely see the little buy flag here, but I played off the pullback and sold up into this little move to the upside. But again, didn't have much conviction, so took a small profit and walked away. So this one here was pretty uneventful. I mean, it made a nice move here. You got to move from 14 to about 18 bucks, and some would say that's a nice move, but it's like, how do you trade it? How do you trade that knowing we just grabbed liquidity off this high? Is there much conviction to play here? And yeah, there really wasn't. Of course, you're also, not to mention being, of course, underneath VWAP and you're watching everything else just fade as well after market open. It doesn't really help that confidence. And so I move away from this. We move on over to CRML, and this looked pretty good. We had a daily breakout, and again, nothing but strength after market open. Put in place a nice range and was able to trade this quite well. And I see I left some money on the table because I'm just so used to seeing these fades after these breakouts at the open that I'm a little bit reluctant to hold. And so price breaks out, opening range put in place here, and it looks pretty good. We see price pull back, puts in place a low, gets bought back up through the highs, pulls back again, gets bought back up through the highs, pulls back again. I finally pulled the trigger after confirming that bottom. And I get a nice little move here. You can see I played it here from 13.07 to about 13.25 for about a 20-cent move. And I get some profit on the table there. But again, I left the money on the table here. I didn't hold through the rest of this move, which I really should have. Looking back in hindsight, I wish that I did, but it's just the lack of conviction from everything else moving. It just sort of leaves you on edge. And so again, we play the same thing here. I take the pullback, I sell up in the strength, I see it then break back below, and I take a small profit here as well. But this right here, this is where things begin to get really interesting and actually puts in place a really nice setup, and I take a beautiful win here. The biggest win of the morning, actually. And so price pulls back again off these highs, and it pulls back to retest over VWAP, and it puts in place a nice low. Now, not only does it put in place a nice low, but we actually pull back and find a big buyer here to move back up into that previous high of day. So as it does that, again, we find a big buyer here off this pullback. It does it again. It pulls back one more time, and again confirms that low again. So now we have put in place this double bottom over VWAP, putting in place the bottom of the range for the leg up higher. So after it confirms this low, I take the entry here on this next candle, risking off the bottom of this candle. So you're thinking in terms of trade, 1370, risking 1350. So about a 30-cent risk. And this was the biggest win of the morning. I was actually able to ride this thing for almost a dollar move. You can see here, took the entry on the confirmed pivot, and we got to move up into the previous highs where I was able to take some profits, and then just kept on trailing stops higher and higher using this 9 EMA. Until I was eventually stopped out here on the breakup, that 9 EMA. And so I played this thing here pretty well. You can see from 1368 to about 1450s, and then was eventually stopped out here after it cracked underneath the 9 EMA. So again, I'm very happy with this here, and I traded it very well, capturing most of this move, pretty much all of the move. The only thing I didn't like about this is the float here was a little bit large. You figure about 42 million share float, and that's a little bit on the larger side for me. But it was underneath 50 million shares, and so it was something that I was okay with trading today. Although it wasn't really an A-plus setup, I would say this was more of a B-class setup. But I still traded. I traded a very, very long 4 for 4 on it today, and so I'm pretty happy with it. Now, going on from this, we had MRM. And now this looked pretty good, but it was a bit of a short-lived setup as well, where we actually saw this thing had broken out. Check this out, where this thing was trying to break out from this pre-market area. Now, of course, we were still stuck here, and I started playing it off the bottom of its range here for the breakout higher. And you can see I did just that. Took it off the bottom of its range for the break of this previous high to get that squeeze back up to VWAP. And so, it's very, you can see here, I took it at the perfect spot at the bottom of the range off the moving averages for the break higher. And I got a little bit of a move and took profits up into this previous high of day. But once it broke back down, took full profit at my entry. And, that was that. I'm glad that I did that. I'm glad that I traded it the way that I did. So a really small base hit win there. And then finally over to PRSO, which I'm actually really happy with. I traded this one fairly well. And so this was putting in place a nice higher low. We see this putting in place a nice rounded bottom. Puts in place a higher low, pulls back once more. And so I take it off the pullback, risking off this past candle's low to see if we can't get up through VWAP and get squeezing back up through these previous highs. Now, I didn't get that move, but I did get a nice move to the upside in order to have a nice profitable trade. So I ended up taking here at 175, risking off of 170 for the room back up into the twos. And so I got to move here to about 183 for a full take profit. And that was a nice little win. But again, that's all it was a nice little win. It was just a small little base hit trade. And so I actually didn't play it anywhere through here because I just didn't like the fact that it was moving up on such low volume. And so I left it alone, and I honestly made the right decision because we can see it gave back that entire move in just 2 candles here on a larger volume move. And so I made the right call there, just taking my small little base hits and ignoring the first part of the move. But the big thing here today is that all of our leading gappers in pre-market are not really, opportune out of the bell. Like we go back to this TTRX, which was the leading gapper going into market open, and it just faded left and right going out of the bell. Now, you look back around at the rest of the gappers that we had as well, and pretty much same story applies. A couple of things moving like EPWK, which I didn't really like too much. But, and so that's the big thing right now is these gappers just are not providing any good continuation after market open, which essentially means you're just left playing with the scraps on everything else right now. And so, again, it's very important you know not what to be trading, but what to be, again, not trading and sitting back whenever you need to as well, because that is, as you know, what trading is, just sitting back and doing nothing. And so I'm really happy with today on that note. Happy that I was able to execute the way that I did and happy to be green today. But it's one of those things where you just have to understand this is not really a hot market right now, but it's a market where, sit back and learn the art of pickiness, the art of being prepared and selective as we go into these really hot months into the rest of the year towards November, December, when things are likely to get heating back up with a lot more volume out there in the market. But anyways, that pretty much sums up the morning recap. Kind of an uneventful day today, but traded CRML to a T, and that's exactly how I did it. Hopefully you learned something from this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe for daily content just like this. Make sure to claim your 7-day free trial down in the description below. That way you can watch me trade stocks just like this every single day in real time and get alerts, watch lists, chat room access, education, and so much more. And that being said, I will see you there.